Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and we get to travel up and down the West Coast, Oregon and California, just to learn history. That's what I'm here for. I get to interview the most interesting people. And here's my guest for today. It's Jim. Jim, what brings you to this country, to this?
Well, I think that I was living up in Portland here just a few years ago. And I have a twin brother, and he lived down there, and he had a heart attack. And so he called me and asked me if I'd come down, and I said, yeah. But, you know, twins, when one has something, the other one has something, you know. And so I came down, and I stopped at Canyonville because I'd lived there for a long time, and I stayed at the senior residence there. But I knew in my own head that something was going to happen to me, heart trouble or heart. And so one day I got up and I went down and I said, call an ambulance. And they said, what for? And me, I said. And they sent me over to Roseburg, and they said, well, your heart's leaking or something. And I said, I knew there was something wrong. And they sent me down to Medford, and I had open surgery on my heart. And that worked out fine. I didn't even know what happened because I felt fine after it. But anyway, I came back here, and my brother is living here in Grants Pass, and he said, I got a place for you to live here in Grants Pass. And I said, well, I got a place up there at Canyonville. And he said, well, you go down to Countryside Village and see how you like it. And I went down there, and boy, the food was twice as good as it was at Canyonville, so I said, I think I'll stay here.
Now, what's this Portland connection with you? What did you do in Portland?
I was a farmer before, but I was also a musician, so I decided I was 65 years old. I was going to be a musician up in Portland. And I went up there, and I knew a couple of musicians and got me a job with a couple of bands playing gigs around, and it worked out pretty good.
Now you're playing what?
I'm playing the saxophone and the trumpet, and I had 9 saxophones at that time, and I played all the different saxophones and things like that.
You mean like a baritone and a tenor?
Baritone and a tenor and a soprano, a straight one. And
oh, that looks like a...
But I played the clarinet, but I never was very good at it. I don't know, I didn't like the clarinet. It squeaked once in a while when I was learning. But
yeah.
So I got jobs everywhere pretty soon because I could read music and everything, and some of them play by ear, you know, and so it worked out pretty good for me.
Well, now I understand that you can not only read the music, but you can transpose it.
Yeah. Yes.
In real time. I mean.
Yeah. My brother just throws a piece of piano music on the piano and starts playing, and I just read the piano music in a different key. He might be in the key of C, and I might be in 3 sharps or 3 flats, you know, and I just do that automatically. But I had 2 brothers that played piano and accordion, and I couldn't play with them unless I could read the music that way. First I'd try and write it out, you know, but that got to be too much of a job. And
too much trouble.
Yeah, but now the musicians that I play with, they can't understand how I can do that, you know. I was playing in this big orchestra up in Portland just for fun, you know, and the conductor said, the third violins aren't, I can't hear the third violins. And I was sitting next there, and I looked over, and I started playing the third violin part, you know, and the conductor said, how can you do that? They said, they're not in the same key you are. How can you do that? And I said, oh, it's a secret.
You've got your secrets. Now, do you still play? You still play that?
I play the saxophone. I don't play the trumpet anymore. You know, when you get old, your muscles get weaker. There's no way you can keep them stronger, you know. And one time I could chin myself with one arm. Now I can't even chin myself with 2. That's old age, I guess, isn't it?
But you're still able to feed yourself, right?
Oh yeah, none of us lose that. None of us lose that.
Well, why don't you introduce us to your friend over here? Where did you guys meet?
Over at the senior center there. He was over there. we'd sit at the same table once in a while and swap lies, you know.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and about this guy with the lies?
Well, most of over there, we eat at the same time, and we got to talking with Jim, and he tells such wonderful stories that everybody stops to listen
I'm
to
impressed with him. He built an airplane.
Yes.
And I'm really impressed with that. He built an airplane, you know, and there are not many people that can do that. And you should tell about that.
Well, actually, my wife helped me build it, so we have to claim it's a partnership.
She didn't know how to build one either, did she?
No, but
And what's your wife's name?
Pat?
Pat?
Yeah. Yeah, it took us 5 years to do it, but because it wasn't the priority item in our life. But we built it, all aluminum, and flew it, and had a great time with it.
Well, was so lucky to be invited to join Pat and you at Thanksgiving dinner. That was
Right.
very, very kind of you. I was visiting the facility, and it's not easy, is it?
No, but that's a phase of life you go through. You know, I always say, it's like playing a game, you know, of cards. You play the cards you're dealt.
Play the hand you dealt.
And do the best you can
Can we
with
talk a little bit about her? She's an artist.
No, Pat was quite a good artist. We started, it was our second marriage, and we started going to art classes together after we were married. And she got to be pretty good, and I wasn't quite as good, so I decided you don't need two artists in one house anyway. And so I phased out of that, and she continued. We had quite a nice studio and everything for her out in the Applegate area near Murphy. But anyway, we lived there 27 years, I believe it was, and enjoyed it very much. And I think she joined just about every art club there was in the area. And I've been very proud of her. Unfortunately, Alzheimer takes over your life, possibly sometime in your life. And with that, one loses a lot of the talent they had in the arts, concentration, things of that nature. I don't want to go into detail about Alzheimer. So many people know about it, but
And that's how I was so privileged to be invited to have lunch with you and your wife. And my hat's off to you. Thank you for sharing that story. And that's how you happened to move into his neighborhood.
That's right. Both of us actually moved over to the retirement community, and then when Pat had to be put in a special facility, then I moved over closer to the place where, we went from a two-bedroom cottage to a single-bedroom apartment.
The thing that I love about this is because you're advertising for, hey, there's life after 65 or after 75. There's fun after. What is your age there, Jim?
86.
Oh, and you don't look a year over 85.
Yeah.
86 and a half.
I'll offer mine. I'll be 85 in May, so I'm only a little year.
Just a little behind.
Behind Jim, yeah.
Well, this is great because you bring stories to our TV audience that I can't tell. You know stories about airplanes, and you know stories about music and Portland area. Now, can you fill us in a little bit about Portland? What else did you do up there?
Well, of course, I was a musician first, and then but I didn't have anything to do during the day. And I'm a farmer, you know, they can't sit still. And I wasn't too much interested in television, so I started working on antique furniture for this lady, and the first thing you know, I had a full-time job there too.
What were you doing for antique furniture?
I was rebuilding it and refinishing it and things like that. And
If it needed a new leg, you knew how.
yeah, she brought me one of these. You remember those old pump organs that you used to play in the pump with? She brought me one of those, and she said, "I bought it for $50. What can you make out of it, Jim?" And I said, "No, let me see." And so I tore it all apart, and I made it was beautiful wood. I made a bookcase. She put it in her store, and the next day she sold it for $550. And she came running back and she said, "Make me another one." And I made 11 of them for her. And but the first one sold for $650 the next week. They said they never seen one like it before. It must have been made by an artisan or someone.
Yeah.
But I think we were talking about paintings, you know, and I always liked to paint, but I was more of a cartoonist than a painter, you know. But my grandmother was a painter, but when she died, she left me the paints because I was always trying to paint something. And so that was in about 1955. Well, I'd get these paints out and I'd paint pictures, you know, and I painted about 10 or 12 canvases, you know, and none of them looked just right, you know. But when I moved to Portland, they were still in a box, so I went up to Portland and I put them on a yard sale and sold them for $10 a piece, you know. And about a year later, I went to this house and I saw this painting with the big lights around it and everything, and I looked at it. It looked like one of my paintings, and so I went up and they said, "Oh, that's a nice painting." And I said, "Who painted it?" And she said, "A famous painter painted that." I didn't say anything.
You didn't, had you signed?
That was quite a victory, wasn't it?
It was worth $1 million frame,
Yeah.
and now you knew what you were
Yeah.
worth.
Yeah.
Incidentally, if anybody wants to know where Jim's farm was, you can tell him how you sold it.
Oh, it was a couple miles past Seven Feathers. And we advertised it for sale, I think for $450,000 or something like that. But it took us a year to sell it. We finally someone came along with enough money for down payment and everything. But we sold it to these people from North Dakota, and they didn't know Oregon, you know. And they had tried to feed the cows out on the ground where it was wet and everything. And they lasted about 5 years, and they sold it to Seven Feathers for $1 million.
Oh,
And
so
that's a
you
pretty good story.
you grew up on $1 million place.
But they're not doing anything with it yet, but they want to build a golf course and some more hotels out there maybe and things like that. But I go out and look at it and see the barns we built and everything, and I hate to see it go, but then you got to move on, don't you?
Yeah.
I tell this story. It may not be too good a taste, but I tell it. These two friends that lived in Days Creek, I didn't know them too well. When they moved up to Portland, and I'd already moved to Portland, and they didn't have any place to stay, so I asked them to stay with me till they got their house fixed up to move into. And she was a terrible character. I mean, her husband, she'd sit down and she'd say, "Go get me a drink of water," and he'd get her a drink of water, and she'd say, "No, take it back. It's not cold enough." And she said, "My feet are tired. Get that stool and put my feet on it." And I looked at her like this, you know. I'd never married, you know, but I thought, boy, this is pretty bad, you know. Well, anyway, I put up with him, and I liked him pretty well, but I couldn't stand her. And her husband finally died, and one day she called me up and she said, "Jim, I'm all alone, and I want you to take care of me."
And you
And I
said,
thought, uh-oh. You know, I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "You know, when we get old like this, it's all a full-time job just taking care of ourselves." And I said, "What happened to your car?" And she said, "Oh, I wrecked it, but you got a car." And I said, "Well, you're just going to have to learn to take care of yourself now and not depend on anyone else." And I hung up. But
real quick.
yeah, that scared me pretty bad. But there's other women that were wonderful, you know. So I don't know.
Well, at your ripe old age, your twin obviously is the same age, but he's not in as good
We
as...
both wish we had a daughter or a son to take care of us when we get goofy, you know, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I understand. Yeah. Where's he living?
He's living here right in Grants Pass over on Hawthorne, between Hawthorne and Highland over there. He has a nice little house and a nice big shop I can go over and work in. So I'm working all the time over there.
But there's some reason that the two of you don't live you always have had separate places far apart?
He's got a little different idea of housekeeping than I did. Because my mother lived with me for about 15 years, you know, and I took care of her. Really, I didn't. She took care of me, but I got used to a nice clean house and meals and everything, and my laundry done and everything. And she lived to be 93, and she was running when she was 93. She was trying to go up the stairs, and she had a stroke, and that was it, you know. But
that's a ripe old age.
But she was, she could do anything. You know, she was just 5 feet, and she had 3 sons over 6 feet.
Oh my!
And the husband was a banker, and she ironed all our shirts, and my father had to have 1 or 2 white shirts a day, you know. And she did all that, never complained. And she was just fun to live with. I mean, she just. I'd come home from work, and she'd say, "What happened today? Who's that? What's the gossip today?" You know, and everything. But she was like me. She'd get on the bus to go somewhere, and the people that invite her to stay at their house, sat with, because they liked her so well.
Never met a stranger.
No, that's right.
Well, Jim, it's mighty nice that I got to meet you. If I hadn't known Tom, we'd still be strangers.
Oh, yeah. But I have the attitude that everybody's wonderful. And that way there, well, it works out pretty good until they change.
Yep, like that complaining woman.
And a lot of people that don't speak, you know, or not out at the center, at senior center, there are ladies out there that they don't ever speak or anything, but I speak to all of them and say, hello, how are you? And they're coming around, you know that. Some of them are starting to say, hi, Jim, and everything like that. They wouldn't speak to me at first.
Well, you talk to Frieda and ask her if she won't be on TV with me. I've only known her since I was a tiny kid, and she's got stories.
She's one of my buddies out there.
Is she?
I build a little table, and I can't even get it over there. She's got it sold to someone. I've got this little table I haven't got quite finished, and she got it sold to someone here in Grants Pass, and she got the name and everything, and she said, I'll tell you where she lives and everything, and you can take it over there. And she said, I'll pay you $5 for you to take it over there. And I said, well, that's all right, I'll take it over. But I haven't quite got it done, you know. And since she's
so you're still building things. You've got a shop.
Yeah, I like to build a little tables with the original style, you know, where they put a mortise and tenons and not so many nails or anything.
Now I'm impressed. You build airplanes, he builds furniture. What else?
He can build furniture too. He's good at that.
Is he?
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff that he's done, yeah. He's real talented with his hands.
I know this guy's worked on the board at a volunteer. Like so many of us, we give back to the community. How many years were you at the Historic Society?
Gosh, I don't know. Well,
let's call it
probably
10.
10 plus, yes.
Yeah, there are so many places that can use your talent, and just because you get gray hair doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah, it seems such a waste, you know, it takes you 70 years to learn all this, not to keep doing it, you know.
Oh, I'm so glad you're willing to come here at Better Life TV and share your stories.
Well,
you've got a few others you'd like to share?
You should hear my brother. He was a bus driver in Riddle, and he had a big tennis shoe that he whipped the kids if they got out of line.
Okay, you folks heard it here.
When he left there, they gave him a diploma for the 8th grade again. They liked him so well.
Oh.
The principals and the superintendents, they all were asking, what am I supposed to do when they'd come? I mean, he was a character over there at the school for 20-some years.
Folks, can you imagine the twin brothers a character? I mean, this guy is everything you said he was. I surely appreciate. You know, Tom had a buddy, and he and his buddy did woodworking. and they helped to build the Historic Society's new research library. Guess what the buddy's name was? Because I remember when you two received a gift of thank you, and they gave you a tom-tom
Oh, yeah.
and a plumb bob.
Yeah, right.
And Bob and Tom had done this yeoman work of taking a house that was going to be destroyed, picked it up, moved it, I guess you had commercially moved,
Yes, right.
and then restored it into a research library. You know, there's a million things we can do instead of throw stuff away.
Well,
What-
it took us about over a year, and we worked almost 8 hours a day on that. And of course, the budget, there wasn't any money, so a lot of the things that we built with came out of pocket. But we enjoyed working together. And it's too bad Bob passed away shortly after we finished it.
We sure appreciate it. Haven't you folks found out that really it costs money to volunteer, but oh, the rewards. The rewards are enormous.
I think the most rewarding thing in my life was teaching little kids.
Tell me about that. You taught music?
I got to teaching these kids music, you know, and I wasn't a teacher. I never been trained to be a teacher, you know, and but I demanded that they learn the right way, you know, and I'd hold up a candy bar. Anyone can play the scale up and down in one breath gets this candy bar. And I put a quarter out and I said, well, you can play this part here without a mistake, you get a quarter. And the principal said, I never heard of a teacher doing that. And I said, boy, it works with me.
Now, this is in Myrtle Creek.
No, that was in Canyonville, the Canyonville Advent School there. But I worked with the Adventists for 27 years.
Just
and I've got some really good stories to tell about that.
Yeah, the Schoenstein story, huh?
So Mrs. Schoenstein's were fine. The Schoenstein boy was a fine trumpet player, but he was very shy. I couldn't get him to do much. I made most of them get up in front and play. This one little boy, he played the trumpet, and he said, you're never going to get me up in front of anybody. He said, I'm not going to do that. Boy, I'm never going to get up in front of anybody. And I finally talked him at Christmas time to play a little short Christmas carol. And he got out there and he made about a half a dozen mistakes on this little thing, you know. But the audience gave him a big hand, you know. And when he came off, he says, when can I play again?
Oh, you won him over. Now, this little band, how many, you started with one lesson?
Yeah, one boy, yeah.
As a volunteer?
Yeah. The doctor there wanted me to teach him to play the trumpet.
Because that's your profession, one of your many professions.
I guess it is. I don't know. When they came to replace me, they had two teachers came that had degrees and everything, and they said, how did you do this? I said, we can't do that.
So then this little school had trumpet, and you taught one kid, and then how many?
And ended up by about 300 over the years.
Oh, wonderful. Music.
And some of them are music teachers.
Oh, I hope they're watching right now. They give you a call, write you a love note. You can.
They're old though. Their students are old. I came down here to Grants Pass, and this was last summer, and I like to go to yard sales, old furniture thing, and so I said, there's one out there at Merlin, I think I'll go out there. And I went out there, and this guy came out, and he had gray hair and gray beard and everything, and I said, I hear you have a yard sale. And he said, aren't you Mr. Church? And I said, yeah, I'm Mr. Church. Who are you? And he said, I was a student of yours. He said, I was 12 years old now. He said, I'm 62 now.
That happens, doesn't it?
And he said, I want my wife to meet you. And he went and got his wife to meet me and everything. And I couldn't place him. I couldn't remember him or anything, you know. And he said, he was my teacher for 3 years, he said. He taught me how to play the trumpet.
Oh, that must be so rewarding. And you played in marching bands? Or
I played anywhere they needed a musician. I played. and things like that. And one time the Adventists, they had what they called a gathering like the Boy Scouts do. They have a different name for them, and they had all the towns came and they met in Roseburg, you know, Portland and Salem and Eugene and everything. And when the program opened up, my band marched in playing, and none of them had any musicians there. And the Portland man, he came to him and he said, "If you ever come to Portland, I want you to teach my school," he said.
Good for you. You know, teachers are wonderful.
You don't make a lot of money sometimes. Nowadays you do, but there's often a lot of satisfaction in seeing somebody learn something.
I can remember taking my 50 cents to the piano teacher every week, 50 whole cents. And she'd come from Medford. Alta Robinson was so patient with us. And she'd let us have recitals, and it was almost like a debutante ball. I mean, you dressed, you sat, you had entertainment. Afterwards, you had a reception. Oh, it was just wonderful training for a little kid.
My mother bought this piano. She took us over to Pontiac, Michigan. They were all black over there. And she went to this black church, and she bought this piano for $20 because we wanted to learn to play the piano. We were 11 years old, I think, and they hauled it over to the house, and we got this piano teacher to teach us. And my mother had to feed him, and he'd eat while he was teaching us, you know, and we practiced, you know. But
what a deal! I'll play for lunch, huh?
Right.
And he taught you.
He taught us. We took piano for a couple of years, but we didn't like the piano too well.
Well,
but we learned, you know.
You learned music.
The teacher was good, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, I sure look forward to hearing you and your music. And would you be sure to contact me and say, hey, he's gonna do a gig over at our retirement place?
Right. Yes.
I thank you, Jim and Tom,
thank you.
so very much for being our guests.
I know I talk too much, but then...
That's what makes the show so interesting. Yeah. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, just saying thank you so much for tuning in. It's people like Tom who just make this show wonderful. Thanks so much.